Now, speaking about Adjacent Promise, motion capture became synonymous to you.
Yeah.
I mean, you created this whole genre. You made Gollum, right? Iconic. Everybody knows about it. People talk about it. How did you get that role, and how did that come to be?
Well, it's funny. You know, it was in 1999. So in the same week as I was auditioning for Gollum, no, I got a call from this is how it happened. I got a call from my agent saying, Andy, look, they're interested in you they're making quite a big trilogy of film, Lord of the Rings, down in New Zealand, and this is my agent on the phone, and
I said, that's your agent.
That's my and they want to see you for it's not really kind of like you know, it's a voice for a digital character. And I went, hold on a minute, what, a voice for a digital character? What are you talking about? I said, look, there must be a dozen decent parts in that movie. You know, can you not get me up for something proper? You know, can you get me up for a decent proper role? I don't want to do a voice for it.
A voice, get a voice actor.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what I was thinking. I was thinking, why are they thinking about it? Anyway, and they said, no, well, the character is Gollum, and I thought, Gollum, that's a great character. That's an amazing role. I remember reading The Hobbit when I was a kid. I hadn't actually read Lord of the Rings at that point, but I was fascinated with The Hobbit when I was a kid and read the book. So I thought, well, how am I going to work on this? Because if they're just after a voice, how do I approach the role? I only think holistically about creating a role. So how can I...
Holistically?
You know, absolutely. I can't just separate the voice from me, or from the body, or from the psychology, or the emotion, or you know, I can't just come up with a voice. So it's like, okay, how am I going to get into this role? And I started to go through the book and sort of culled the whole book, looking for descriptions of the character and what you know, where does his voice come from, and what psychologically, how do you link that? And of course discovered that Gollum is called Gollum because of the way he sounds, and therefore and he also carries an enormous amount of guilt because he kills his cousin, because the ring is very, very, it's like a powerful drug, and he wants to kill his cousin to get the ring. And so okay, so he's carrying this guilt with him, and that is in his throat, which you know, which affect. And then I wanted sort of thinking about a physical action, where he carries his pain and sort of physicality. Where does that come from? You know, in the book he's described as moving like a frog and like a young puppy, and a kind of, you know, all these animalistic kind of descriptions. But then I saw, bizarrely, this is absolutely true, my cat came into the kitchen where I was kind of thinking about was, and I was just watching Diz, my cat, Diz, named after Dizzy Gillespie, and he started to cough up a furball, and he started going like this, right? So his whole spine was kind of rippling, and I was thinking, God, that movement, that is exactly the sort of involuntary action that Gollum kind of gets when the power of the ring is kind of overcoming him. And so that voice, when I auditioned, there was a prototype version of kind of going from the cat to sort of going to got it. You know, that's how it sort of, that was the beginning of the voice. And then, so I went up and did a regular audition, sat on a chair, or actually I crawled up onto the chair and sort of was hunched over. And John Hubbard was cast in The Hubbards, you know, you may well know. And he filmed me, and I just remember his face afterwards, and I did this voice, and then he just went like that. And anyway, that was sent off to Peter Jackson. Kind of a few months later, I got a call saying Pete's in town, wants to see you. He's at the American Church in Tottenham Court Road, and you know, he wants to see you. And I went in and discussed with him, and as soon as I met him, I just thought there was a real, I mean, it was a real connection that I have to say, a kind of a connection that I've very rarely had with anybody walking into a room apart from your good self. You know, but it was like I kind of knew that we would be spending a lot of time in each other's pockets over time. It was a very, very strong connection, and he basically described that, in fact, it wasn't just going to be creating a voice for the character, but it was he did something very revolutionary, which is, up to that point, visual effects driven films often sort of left actors stranded, so that they were having to act off a tennis ball on a stick. You know, if I was playing a scene with some digital creature, it would be the visual effects team that came and put it in later, and you'd have to act, say, like you know, the camera on a tripod. It'd be like a tennis ball on a stick, and you'd have to, you know, you do all the acting for something that isn't actually there. So you're not reacting, you are overacting to compensate for the fact that, so that you had these people who were having these horrible experiences like you and McGregor in Star Wars, and all of the, you know, all these people having to imagine stuff that are giving them nothing. So Pete said, look, I want an actor to play the role, because he drives a lot of the scenes, you know, he's the kind of the motor of a lot of the scenes. And how do you get that? How do you get the others to react to something if there's nothing there, and it's just the visual effect that's going to be put in later on? So that was the sort of that was my understanding, and that made me want to, you know, take this risk, even though I wouldn't actually finally end up on screen as myself and in my own, you know, in the flesh. I was going to be giving up what was to be 3.5 years of my life to play a character that I didn't know the route and the journey to get to it, but I just trusted this great director, and between us I knew that something would come out of it. I assumed something would come out of it. So that began this journey of using performance capture technology, and that role was obviously the one that did it. But it wasn't until the end of shooting Lord of the Rings, and all of the journey that I'd been on with creating that character, thinking, wow, I've had the most incredible experience working with this evolving new technology, which actually, you know, is like you're the puppeteer and the marionette at the same time of an avatar character. I thought that was all going to be over at the end of Lord of the Rings, and on the very kind of in the last set of pickups, happened to be my birthday. It was an Easter Sunday. He invited me over to his house, and he actually gave me one of the rings from the Two Towers. He gave me one of the original rings and said, you know, this is for you, and we want to ask you to play King Kong in my next film. And that, for me, was the second big epiphany, really, I suppose, in my life, which was, I've just played a character of 3.5 foot tall, shriveled ring junkie, you know, and now he's asking me to play a 25-foot gorilla. This is the end of typecasting. This means that as an actor, you can play anything. You can become anything. It doesn't matter how tall, how short, what sex you are, what the color of your skin is. It means here's a tool for 21st century actors that means that you can embody anything. And that has started a kind of a 20-year journey of...
Unbelievable.
You know.
Let's hear it for him. One of the things that I want to ask you is the fact that your career has been going more and more, and now you're directing. You're also a director, a writer. Now, what a piece of advice would you give actors for the long journey, for the long haul? What would you tell them?
Well, it's very interesting because, you know, I think there are different ways you approach art in your life and your relationship to art. And I think there was a huge dividing line in my life when I had family and my own children, and it's sort of, you're irrevocably changed when that happens, because the search that you're going on, your own personal search, or even with your partner, you know, with Lorraine, my wife, you know, becomes altered in an unimaginable way. You are, you know, your love is extended to other people, and therefore there is a huge amount of time and energy and effort that goes into becoming that person who can support young people and bring them into the world and raise them hopefully well, or have a go. And sometimes fail miserably, by the way. And but so the long haul, I can only say, for me, that is part of the long haul journey. It's like your life may well change radically, and I believe that it's still possible to be, and I know this to be true because my wife, who's actually has become the primary caregiver in recent times, it was very equal for a long time. In the last 20 years, it's been me, I suppose, who's been out front and sort of bringing home a wage, but it's your art doesn't stop. It just changes, and your focus. I was very much a method actor when I was a younger actor, and because I didn't have anybody else to care for but myself and my partner. But I could, when I worked on films with Mike Lee, I would be in character for months working on a character. You can't do that if you have a family and you want to be a half decent parent. You have to be able to unplug, and sometimes that can be confusing. Sometimes that can be like, that when your situation changes, you're not always able to, be just an artist. And actually, you can forgive yourself for that, because I think otherwise, what we're doing is negating a huge part of ourselves, which is being a human being. And in order to be an actor, you have to be a human being and see the world around you, engage in the world around you.
We talk a lot about creating a great life for yourself, going out there, because you can't be any more interesting than you are as a human being, because you're such an interesting person, because I've had pleasure of spending time with you. You're always interested in everything.
Yeah.
You always want to learn about everything. I want to know, where does your positivity come from? You're a very positive person. That's not common, but it is common with people who are very successful. But where did that positivity come from?
I was very, very lucky to be brought up in a family where we were loved. I didn't so much spend time with my father. He worked away, but my mother was she was a teacher. She taught disabled children, and a lot of positive. She was incredibly positive and a really amazing role model. And so I spent a lot of time growing up with disabled kids and kids with polio and spina bifida and multiple sclerosis and all this, and seeing how positive they were. I think. Right. Seeing how they engage with life, and
they're positive all the time.
Yeah, and didn't consider themselves disabled. That was their normality. That was that was what life dealt them, and that's how they, and that's how things were. So they had fun. I remember the school that she taught at, which I spent a lot of time at, being a place of great fun and not a kind of a sort of a dismal, sort of old Victorian sort of attitude towards disability. It was in a time of change when disability was beginning to be much more accepted in the sort of 70s, early 80s. Up to that point, I think being disabled was tough, and actually some of my work as a actor and director has been about being disabled.
Your first film was Breathe, was it?
That's right.
And it was about a disabled person.
It was. Yeah.
And you have such a great sensitivity. I want to ask you, what is the best piece of advice anybody ever gave you?
It's probably. It wasn't actually a person who said it, but it was a quote from a play that I did, and it's just about being in the moment, really, because that's I think for me is what I was failing at being. I was either pretending to be someone else, or not pretending to be, but getting inside someone else's mind, and and then if I wasn't doing that, I was thinking about it, and then I wasn't engaging with people I was with, so I think it's really important to, especially when you have children, you being in the moment and present, I think is the most important thing that I always, a mantra that I always kind of repeat to myself.
You've done so many incredible projects and became very successful. What has success given you? What are some of the things that people don't know? What are the positives, and what are some of the, is there any negatives? Is there some downside to it at all, or to you? Or
yeah, I think the positives have been, I never went into this business thinking about the financial concern was never. I'm not a business head at all, and never have been. And I've been fortunate because things have come my way. I've been very lucky, and I count myself incredibly privileged to work at something that I adore doing. And I think, so many. I know lots of people, but people have to work at things they hate doing or can't bear doing, and to spend the majority of your life, doing things that just to get by. That is one of the most incredible gifts that this business has, and I've been fortunate enough to receive from it, is being literally nourished by my daily activity of what I do. And hopefully,
what is it that you do? What is your daily activity? What kind of things do you like to do to feed yourself?
Well, but this. I mean, so having a varied kind of, I've always been, as you say, I do have interest in lots of different things.
It's sort of varied life.
Yeah,
You're into this, you're into that. Yeah. It's not the same thing. You're such a rich. You really are an artist. I mean, a true artist. Yeah.
But I'm very lucky. I feel lucky because of that. I feel, that I mean, you do make your luck to a certain extent. You do carve your own tracks to a certain extent. But a huge part of the acting profession is being right place at right time, And there are places and times where it doesn't go your way, and that can be crushing. And I've had my long times out of work, where you've done something and you thought, oh man, this is it. This is going to be, and then zilch for and you're thinking, what's going on? And that's the moment. That's what I mean about being in the moment. Then it's like, okay, so how am I going to keep myself nourished when I'm, I don't have this other thing that's driving it for me?
So in other words, you're talking about what do you need to do when it's quiet? And that's what everybody here has to figure out. What do you need to do to keep yourself alive? Keep yourself excited? You have to learn how to motivate yourself. You have to know how to inspire yourself. I have had the pleasure of spending some time with you and your family. I've never met such a nice family, first of all. And they're all talented. They're all doing movies. You have a daughter and a son. They're in things. And your wife. It's unbelievable. And did you tell me that the kids auditioned to get into your family? Is that true? Because those two kids are unbelievable. One was starring in a movie. What was it called?
The Kid Who Would Be King.
The Kid Who Would Be King. That was his star. That was his son. And your daughter, beautiful. She's in a Netflix movie.
Yeah. She's funny. Weirdly, it's called Letters to the King, which is
Letters to the King. It's all about King.
It's all about.
And you're the king.
Wow.
You're the king. Let's hear it for the king. The thing about Andy is that he really nourishes you. He gives you everything he can, and it's such a pleasure. And I had written a film with my partner, and we were trying to find the right director with the right heart. And then we met Andy, and there's no way not to fall in love with his passion and his care and his he just wants it great. He wants to leave a piece of art that he told me 20 years from now we will all be proud of doing. So it just is such an amazing...
It's an incredible story, and Bernie's being very humble because he has written the most beautiful script. It's one of the most powerful scripts I've read. They very rarely come along where you're so engaged and drawn to the storytelling, what it's about, and the characters, and the work that Bernie's done with Gabe is phenomenal. And it literally has been at the centre of become the centre of my kind of world for the last since a year and a half now.
Yeah, we've been working on it. So we're very lucky.
Actually, I have a question. I have a question for you guys to think about, and maybe we can discuss very briefly. So, and I think I told you about this the other night. So last, was it this year? Yeah, it was this year. There were the SAG Awards for the actors, and in LA, which Bernie was there for, and the cast of Black Panther were nominated for an ensemble award, in which we won, and we were all celebrating afterwards, and it was great. It was a great night, and I was talking to Michael B. Jordan, and we were talking about the way that casting is happening and how things are changing, how the barometers are. Black Panther's had a huge kind of impact socially and culturally, and it seems finally that equal representation in certain is finally beginning to kind of happen really. And I was asked a question by some press about Scarlett Johansson turning down a role recently. She was offered a role of a transgender person, and she accepted the role, and then she took a lot of flack for accepting the role, and finally she backed down and said, "Okay, I get it. I'm not gonna take this role." And I was asked in the press, what do you think of that decision? And I said, well, listen, I've occupied a space in this industry and lived in a world where I fully believe that any actor can play anything. That's the core of what I believe, that we all, we're about empathy. We're about walking in other people's shoes or believing we happen to be someone else. In order to tell a story, in order to change society. So I actually do think all actors should be able to play anything, right? So I said to Michael, we were talking about this, and then I said to Michael, do you ever see a world where you could play Abraham Lincoln and I could play Martin Luther King, right? Using performance capture technology. So it's not putting on makeup. It's embodying that other character because you can, as an actor, because you can reach that character, regardless of as I say, going back to what I was saying earlier, the color of your skin, the size you are, this is a technology that allows you to embody anyone or anything. So I wanted to open that up to you and see what your thoughts would be if
Well, I think it's absolutely possible for us to do anything. And I think we only limit it by our imagination. A problem that Andy has actually caused the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, known as the Oscars, is because his acting is so great. They're saying, do we nominate the gorilla? I mean, what do we do? Is it the gorilla going to be nominated? We got Gorilla, we got Robert De Niro, we got Leonardo DiCaprio and a gorilla. Gorilla, how was it? Well, it was hard working with the girl. She was fickle. I couldn't get a hold of her. Because now he's actually causing a problem. And of course, with motion capture, we can play anything because Einstein said imagination is more powerful than knowledge because knowledge is always limited, but imagination is endless. And you have been able to break the boundaries of what's possible. So it's so beautiful to be with a real artist. Of course, we should be able to play anything. And to get into the empathy of someone else, it's just a beautiful thing. Don't you agree? Yeah. Let's hear for that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I would like to know how you, obviously when you prepare a role, there's the whole psychological and you prepare everything. But right before the performance, before either theater or right before action, maybe the 15 minutes or 10 minutes before that, do you do always the same things? Do you do something?
What do you do to prepare yourself before you do a take? What is your preparation like?
I mean, I'm the sort of actor who, I do need space. It's very funny because when you're working with actors on film, particularly because there's no rehearsal. I mean, in theatre it's different, but there are certain actors who can be talking about anything, what they had for lunch, their kids and blood, just like they can until the moment before the take. And that's how they springboard into, and they can make the leap and they can do it, and that's for them. And that's their trigger, and they can do that. I'm the opposite of that. I need space, and I need moment. I do need time to kind of bed down and get in the zone, and kind of, I often take myself away from the situation and just have that moment of transition where it is kind of you are giving yourself over to the character and. Even if it can be, sometimes you don't have the luxury of that. So you really don't, and because you're turning over quickly or whatever. But you have to find a mechanism, and so I suppose there's a part of me that no matter how little time I have, I know how to flick the switch, and I consciously do that, and that works for me. As I say, other people.
Do you get physical?
Sometimes, if certainly for say in the Apes movies, you can't just kind of go, oh, okay, and then and roll and action, and you're having your Starbucks or whatever, and you kind of you have to, we always asked for a little bit of warning as to how long, before the camera's going to roll, and so I mean. Those films are great, and actually I wish you could see some of the behind the scenes which I know were never ever shot, but we used to do for the Apes movies, long improvisations where we'd get into character and we'd be just like, as a group now, how do you work out the hierarchy within Caesar's troop, the foot soldiers, the kind of, the family, where they sit, all that, how that hierarchy works. So we'd do these kind of 3-4 hour improvisations where nothing would be said and we would just be in character as apes, and it was just relating to each other. And so suddenly to go from that to, right, you're on, quick, it was just like, we all needed that time to engage with each other and when we didn't have that, it was really, you suddenly saw the ridiculousness of what you were doing. If it was literally like, come on, then it would be, and you weren't in the zone, you thought like, this is crazy, I'm going, I'm doing that, and you've got dots all over your face and a head-mounted camera and dots all over, you have to get into the zone.
Last question, what is it that keeps you sparked? You always have this energy. What are you in search of, Andy?
My spark gets greater because I realize that time is getting shorter for the... Seriously. I have so many stories and ideas and things I want to do, and I went through a period, I think, and I've calmed down a bit now, but I went through a period in my probably late 40s where it was like, come on, there's so much to do.
No, but you know what? That's what Leonardo da Vinci said. I don't have time to wait. No, we don't. We have a limited amount of time. That is the truth. We don't have a lot of time, and you have a lot of things to do. And what I want to say is that I am blessed and honored to have Andy as my friend, a mentor, an artist, and we brought you something because, as you always said, life is about pain and champagne. Let's hear it for Mr. Andy Serkis!
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Hey, I have a few more things. Hold on a second. Let's hear it for him!